Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session Risk, Compliance, and Resilience Key to Information Security Management. I am Renal Vicaria, your host, and I am thrilled to have you join us, especially as we are celebrating Women in Cyber Talks Month. So, before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. Now about our speaker, Ljubica Pendaroska. Ljubica is a recipient of Cybersecurity Top 50 Women of Influence Europe for 2021 and 2019, a senior expert consultant, international trainer, speaker in data management, personal data protection, and privacy. She is also the founder and president of Women for Cyber North Macedonia, part of the international cybersecurity community. She has served and led various projects as a senior expert at international bodies such as the European Union, the World Bank, and UNICEF. Further, she has also governed data management and personal data establishment and operation within fast-growing public and private sector entities in Europe and Middle Eastern countries. Based on the tailored training program she has built in her field of expertise, she has also trained relevant employees within various future and vision-oriented companies. Geographically, her work primarily focuses on Europe and the Middle East, with a key focus on the EU, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and Oman. So, without any further delay, I would now hand over the session to you, Ljubica.
Thank you, Rinal. Thank you for having me once more during this very insightful, and I would say having in mind the expertise I have and also experience with our previous session. This way of communication of important and challenging topics is a good way forward in order to improve, for instance, the cybersecurity or governance or risk area. Good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to express my gratitude to the EC Council and to all of you for today's opportunity to share my thoughts related to this challenging and, believe me, in the near future, also more challenging topics and issues to discuss about, having in mind what's going on related to machine learning, related to artificial intelligence, and all other ways of fast ways of sharing information and communication. It is even more my privilege to be today here, especially having in mind that nowadays and actually whole month, EC Council is organizing various sessions which are dedicated to women and their expertise and what they have so far achieved in some area. So I'm happy to share some of my thoughts and what I find it important also for women in cybersecurity nowadays. Let's furthermore provoke what's actually my personal motto, my personal and professional motto: inspire and let yourself to be inspired. As Rinal said, and she already shared with you some information from my short biography. Most of my expertise is concentrated on data protection, privacy, data management, and cybersecurity. But also one of my roles is recently in the last year solely concentrated on what we call GRC, or governance, risk, and compliance, and especially the way how they are interconnected and impact the information security. So in that way, we are starting our today's session with where we can find the first question we should answer in order to further discuss during this webinar is why we talk about risk, compliance, and resilience in one place. Having in mind the experience I have working in the field and especially on the ground with companies, with organizations and other legal entities, I find it that for companies, if they want to be successful, then they need to put all these three dimensions, risk, compliance, and resilience, in one place to work in synergy in a way, because otherwise they will fail to get to those results in order to be successful. So where actually is the interconnection between risk, compliance, and resilience? These components are ensuring that an organization can effectively navigate all challenges in a way that aligns with legal, regulatory, and strategic objectives. So let's see, for instance, what key points or what key aspects each of these area is covering on. First, the risk management is covering the risk identification as a starting point in any process, because you must first identify and understand, not only identify, but you must first understand potential risks on the way. Then you're doing so-called risk assessment, or you evaluate the likelihood of this risk to happen in practice and the potential impact that that risk might have on your working tasks and at the end on the results of your company working. And finally, it comes the risk mitigation, because once you have understand the potential risks and you evaluate the likelihood and potential impact of that risk, in that case, you must find out the right way, or that means to have the strategy how to reduce the likelihood or impact. And then we come to the point of compliance. Compliance is all about legal, which means whether you're following or not the applicable and relevant laws and regulations. Then whether it is not important and relevant to follow the legal rules, but what's very important is to follow also the industry-specific rules, because because each area, each industry has its own specifics, which must be identified and which must be answered in the right way. And finally, having in mind the legal and regulatory component, you must build so-called internal documents or acts of the legal entity, which are policies, procedures, and standards, which actually will help the organization to implement all those applicable rules and standards into their everyday working practice. When it comes to resilience, you can't be resilient, your company or your organization can't be resilient if two previous components, risk on one side and compliance on the other side, you fail to resolve them in a proper and relevant way. Once you identify the risk and once you do everything which is in your power to be compliant, at least in a high level compliance, then you are actually putting the ground for resilience of your company on a long run. But what I always suggest to companies when we are discussing what's the best system, if I may say system or framework, which is maybe a better word to address it, what's the best frameworks they can put in practice and what they should take care about when they're trying to find the best solution for their company. I always set and recommend to them to first of all to have in mind the full landscape for the company itself, also to have in mind all business, the overall business orientation and strategies of the company, and starting from so-called general strategy or general business orientation and operating orientation of the company, to start from there and to build separate entities within that strategy. And information, someone may ask, we said at the very beginning, and actually that's the topic of our today's session, It is dedicated to risk, compliance, and resilience. And someone may ask why these are important for information security, and actually what unites the three concepts to information security. Without this concept, having in mind that nowadays most of work and operation of each company is based on having information and based on having relevant data, that means that it's all about information. A few years ago, or maybe a decade ago, it was said that knowledge is the key for everything. But nowadays, since we are living in the age of information and data, for sure, it is about everything. It is about having the right information and having the respective and proper management system in order to use the data and information properly, in order to get value from that information that you have. So by developing, implementing, and of course managing a security program within your company, within your organization, you can achieve very important outcomes, such as strategic alignment on the level of the company. You can actually have put in place the right and valuable risk management system. You can get value from the data you can have. That means you can optimize the resources you're putting in place. You can have successful performance measurement. And finally, you can have in place assurance process integration. Maybe this sounds a bit confusing because we are talking in general terms, but furthermore, through this webinar, we will put some light on three specific aspects when it comes to information security, and that's why we are proceeding with the risks, as we identify that risks actually are the starting point in each information system management. So, risk and what's important about risk management is that we must start from somewhere. And where we start, for sure, we should start from the very beginning. So, here on the screen, you see identified several, actually 7 steps in total, which are steps how you do in a proper way the risk assessment in order to identify the risks. But I must say this is one model. That doesn't mean that some step in between or semi-step can't jump in the whole process of risk assessment. But more or less, companies or organizations are using these systems or go through these steps in order to assess their potential risks. And this is a very useful way, actually, how you can use it for doing a risk assessment in your company if you're working on it. The first step is actually the one that I mentioned previously: establish the context. That means I'm facing a situation when we are on the very beginning of negotiation, I would say, with companies working on their risk assessments or their compliance. The first reaction of the companies is that we want the best possible solution and the most successful system that some other successful companies already put in place and gave them results they wanted. But I say, okay, this is a good starting point, but that doesn't mean that that system, since it was successful in other cases, it will be successful in your case as well. That means that you must start and be realistic in your risk assessment if you want to be successful, and at the end to have objective results, not subjective one. That's why you must first of all establish the context, which means to put the risk assessment and risk management in the context of your company, and to take into consideration the input and collaboration of all entities, all departments, all units, and all not only decision makers and top level, high management level within your company, but you must take into consideration all departments within or units within your company. Because this is the only way how you can identify the risk, the second step. That means that each department should identify first their own risk on the department or unit level. Then you're proceeding, you're putting in correlation, you're actually summarizing the identified risks for each part of the company. You summarize them and you're doing the third step, risk analysis. Then you're doing risk evaluation. Further in the webinar, we will show what does it mean for a company, risk capacity, risk potential, risk, other risk aspects. So you must evaluate the risks you have. And once you evaluate the risk you have, you know which of the risks are high-level risks, which are mid-level risks, and which are low-level risks. And you are asking yourself, what I need to do, what kind of organizational and technical measures I should have in place in order to treat these risks properly, according to their level of severity, according to the level of their impact they have on the overall working of the company. But we are not stopping there. Once you acknowledge the right treatment you should have in place, you must monitor the whole process and you must review it and measure things, because after a while you should say, okay, ask yourself whether this treatment and these measures are giving results that I want to, or whether I need to replace, for instance, some measures in order to mitigate and address the risks in a proper way, or I need maybe to change something, because it is more than evident that when you are doing, for instance, the risk management for the first time on a company level, then you don't have, the company doesn't have the right information from the ground. But once you're reviewing it after 6 months or after a year, then you can clearly see how this risk management works in practice. And finally, you must adequately communicate the risk management system and report to decision makers, to those that in the company decide what should be taken further on. Also, what we need to do is to actually, what we need to do next is the risk appetite and tolerance. This is what I previously mentioned. It is very, this I will call it a diagram, shows very vividly what is risk capacity, what is risk appetite, risk tolerance, risk target, and risk limit. Why this diagram is very important? Let me show you through the next screen. Because when you, as I said, identify the risk, then you must find the proper way how to respond it, how to treat it. Because you must find a way or option which is most relevant in your case. And you can't know that if you don't go through these, I would say, issues when it comes to the risks identified in your actually company. So my question is to those working on risk identification: do you know your company's risk appetite and risk tolerance? Risk appetite is the amount or type of risk your organization can accept in pursuit of strategic objectives, balancing both threats and opportunities. And each company should actually assess and find out how realistically, to be realistic in that assessment, what is your appetite for risk? What is your company's appetite for risk? On the other side, the next question is, how much of the maximum risks an organization can take regarding each relevant risk. And finally, what's the risk limit or threshold to which to monitor so exposure to that risk doesn't deviate much from risk target and stays within the organization. Once you do this, you go further and you say, okay, what's the best possible way, or what kind of measures, organization, but also technical measures we should take into consideration and implement in practice in order to respond to each identified risk relevantly and accordingly. I always suggest to the companies, don't try to ignore the risk, because ignoring the risks can be the most dangerous thing that you can do for your company. Risks always have great impacts. So if you ignore the risk, then there is no possibility to address it, and the risk will stay here, and it can devastate. Actually, in some cases, it can be so big that it can devastate your company's working as well. Once you identify the risks and you're trying to find the best possible way to address it, you have four possible options. The first one, according to your risk appetite and your risk tolerance, but also according to the risk limit, you can terminate the activity if you, for instance, find out that this risk is so big and so severe that there is no logical reason you should go on with that activity. But if you don't agree to terminate the activity, then you go further. You can transfer. If the risk is not that big enough for you to terminate the activity, then you can try to transfer the risk. That means if your company, for instance, doesn't have human capacity or technological capacity to respond properly to the risk, then maybe you can decide to transfer that risks to some outsourcing company which has the capacity to actually to respond to the risks on a proper way. You can also find out that if the risk is, you can resolve the risk in a proper way and the impact is not that high and not that dangerous, then in that case, you can try to find the proper measures to mitigate the risks. And you can accept the risk if you think that the impact level of that risk is very low, so it won't provoke any security issues, it won't provoke any issues when it comes to data protection, when it comes to privacy, or when it comes to any other human right in place. Effective risk management, this is a very important component from my experience so far working on the ground with companies. I find it that you can have the best possible risk management system, the best possible risk strategy, but if you don't have the proper measures which are going to measure the effectiveness of the risk management, then your whole risk management system will fail. So what are the most important or key risk indicators? It's up to the company itself, it's up to the area or sector in which the company operates. But here I suggest some criteria how you can select the most effective measures for risk measurement for your company. The first thing that you should have in mind is the impact. So that means that indicators for risk with high potential impact actually are the best possible and the starting one in risk management, measurement process. The second one is effort to implement, measure, and report. For different indicators of equivalent sensitivity to changing risk, you should take into consideration and put in place those indicators that are easier to measure in the place. Also, we should have in mind that when we are talking about risk management, we should take into consideration both quantitative and qualitative measures. You need numbers, you need percentages, but also you need qualifiers, qualitative indicators in order to match quantitative and qualitative indicators. Reliability means that the indicator must possess a high correlation with the risk and to be a good predictor or outcome measure. And finally, sensitivity. That means that the indicator you implement in the particular case must be representative of the risk you're measuring and capable of accurately indicating variances in the risk level. The second part is compliance. Compliance, when we talk about compliance, more or less everyone said it is about only for lawyers, it is only for those that wants to work with documents, and that's a boring thing, but I wouldn't agree with that, since I'm a lawyer by education, but more than 15 years I'm working in this field, and I found out that not only lawyers, but also and not only legal departments within each company or HR department or whatever is responsible for compliance. All other departments and also the highest level decision makers within a company are in charge when it comes to being compliant. So why it is important to be compliant in various jurisdictions? This is a very important component for those companies which are working not only within the borders of their nation state, but which are working abroad, which are working internationally. It is very important to be compliant, first of all, because in that way you're avoiding legal penalties imposed by different legislations and jurisdictions, but also various financial losses on the way. That way you're protecting shareholder trust, which is very important in the business world, and all of us working in that business environment should have in mind that once your trust is shaken, it's very actually it's there is no way how to improve it. So that's why you should take care of being compliant. Being compliant means that you can mitigate cybersecurity risks nowadays, and you can enable cross-border operations, which is very important nowadays. For instance, in the Middle East region, as you know, they are fast forward progressing economies. But if they want to work, for instance, with Europe countries, with EU countries, or with US countries, then they must change their national legislation in order to show that their national legislation is compliant and is offering the same level of protection as those coming from those companies coming from EU or US. And finally, being compliant can prepare you in a good way for audits and different kinds of inspections. This is the hardest work for companies operating in various environments. And I always get this kind of questions, how a company can be compliant in case it operates or it works in different legal environments. This is a tricky question, and it is a very demanding one, because it asks you to follow every now and then, all the time, to be updated, to update their companies, what's going on, to make internal changes in internal documents, internal processes. And it's a very demanding when it comes to human resources, when it comes to technology, when it comes to trainings, when it comes to awareness raising. But if you must do that, then you must do that if you want to operate in this very fast changing world, I will say. So here I'm offering you a few relevant tips. First of all, you can conduct and what you should do. When I say you, I mean your company, or if you're working on that position or that role in the company, you must conduct regular risk assessment in order to find out whether you're in line with relevant laws and whether something changed in the meantime from the last time when you did the assessment. Then you must go in step. Once you find out that there are changes in the relevant laws and regulations, then you must update, if you have in place your cybersecurity policies and other relevant policies, or if you don't have, then you must develop one. What's important, and this is a never-ending story, are trainings for the employees and also awareness program. But this is not a one-stop shop. This is an ongoing process. You must provide the relevant training to the employees about what's going on and about to raise their level of awareness and to keep on that level all the time. And hand by hand with training employees, you must invest in technology solutions. Unfortunately, I know that nowadays technology solution systems it's hard to follow through because they are changing faster than, for instance, the regulations are changing or the standards are changing, but we can't go against it. What we can do is to prepare our companies the best for these new things on the market. One good thing you can do for your company is to invest in those kind of tools or those kind of systems that can automate your process of being compliant. You must monitor regularly changes to remain updated with evolving requirements, and what you should always have in mind all the way is that you must integrate and implement those legal frameworks into organizational strategies. That means that sometimes it's usually that way. Companies' general strategies for operation or business strategies of companies are acts for the next 4 or 5 years, but it doesn't mean they don't need to be reviewed. They must be reviewed, actually, having in mind all the changes that are happening, for instance, in risk assessment, in compliance, because this is a two-way street. So this general strategy for the company must reflect what's going on in every field, and vice versa. Those, if I may say, sub-strategies must follow the general goals, vision, and orientation and business orientation of the company itself. How to stay compliant, how to become actually at first compliant and then to stay compliant, because it is different. You can become compliant, but in order to stay compliant, you should work all the way around all the time. So here are only few acts, actually legal acts to have in mind. The famous GDPR, or EU Act regulation for data protection and privacy. And why I'm mentioning this, because it is not relevant only for privacy and data protection, but for Europe. But it is also relevant for all other parts of the world where companies want to work with data of European Union citizens as well. Then ISO 27001 Information Security Management Standards and Certificate. Cybersecurity Act when it comes to cybersecurity management and reporting. And I will share with you a few helpful examples of compliance management tools. For instance, OneTrust, which is a platform for privacy, security, and third-party risk management. And here I share a few components where OneTrust platform can help you. Then Metric stream and we comply are also some of the tools which are very useful when it comes to GRC management, when it comes to getting real-time alerts for being compliant or not, for doing risk management and assessment. And believe me, I use some of them. They're very useful and valuable when you're trying to stay compliant. Also, here are some tools or techniques that I'm mentioning to have in mind when you try to optimize the performance, such as KPIs, benchmarking, IT balance scorecards, and it's up to the company to decide which of these tools or techniques is the most relevant and appropriate to use it in particular case. The third part is about resilience. Resilience is all about agility, strength, confidence, motivations, challenge, and change. Because in all this complicated process, what we never must forget is that, first of all, this is all about challenging but also motivating people which are working on why they need to work on this and why they need to stay compliant. Few more words about integrating governance, risk, and compliance. I'm going back to the very beginning, since we have few more minutes, to the very beginning, when I said that if the company wants really to be successful for being resilient against all incidents, against all potential bad negative impacts, against all cybersecurity threats, then it must take care to integrate all these components, governance, risk, and compliance in one place, and to make them work together, not side by side. Because only if you put these components and if you put these people working on these components together, then you can expect successful system. So I'm not going further with these elements, but you see here 6 elements which are important in integrating governance, risk, and compliance in practice. And I didn't mention, actually, that's why I'm going back, that building risk-aware culture and working on a high level of risk-aware culture within your business environment, in your company, is maybe sometimes crucial one. Because it has shown that people are the main chain, sometimes the weakest chain within the system, but sometimes actually the best chain within that successful system. Aligning security and business strategies is a very, very important one. Why? And I'm giving here a few practical implementation steps. Identify key business goals. How you can do that? By conducting workshop with leadership to understand strategic priorities. Because if someone works on identifying security or risk management system solutions, but it is not sure about what are the next goals of the company, what are the targets of the company, it can fail in developing the best possible system. Then map security initiatives to objectives. That means to create a matrix linking security activities. Embed security in decision making for sure. That means to integrate security professionals into strategic planning committees to ensure alignment. Develop tailored policies. That is very important. Believe me, nowadays there are so many, I will call them templates for building policies. But it is a huge misunderstanding if someone believes that can only retake someone else's company policies or other internal documents and just rearrange them, and that's it. And finally, measure impact. Regularly report, not only measure what you have in place, but also report how security initiatives contribute to the overall business outcomes. We have a few more minutes before we go to our next session, I would say. I will mention only a few more practical recommendations from my experience to you. I hope that they will be the best possible advice I can give you in those 40 minutes today. Cross-functional collaboration, I'm repeating it many times during our webinar because breaking down silos between departments is crucial for aligning security. Not mentioning that during product development, you should, for instance, have in mind privacy by design principles when you're developing a new product. Risk-aware culture, I mentioned it, and I will go further. Policy harmonization, disjointed or conflicting policies, because we're not talking about 1, 2, 3 policies within one company. Sometimes there are more than 5, 10 policies regulating various aspects of companies' issues. But if they are conflicting between them, then you can't be successful in implementing the system in a whole. Leveraging established frameworks. Here in place, you have so many standards which are crucial and very important when it comes to leveraging established frameworks. This is actually, it is not the last slide, but this is something where I will skip to the finale of our webinar, for this part of the webinar. I'm not going further in establishing metrics because I said that metrics are very important. So some practical implementation steps: define key metrics, automate data collection, very important stuff, set benchmarks, communicate metrics effectively, and review and refine them regularly. Challenges in GRC. We have a lot of challenges. Fragmented GRC framework, and I have a suggestion here: implement an integrated GRC framework using technology platforms that unify processes and improve collaboration. Evolving regulatory landscape, follow the regulatory landscape, and use some of automated tools for tracking changes. Take care about increasing reliance on digital platforms in order to strengthen cybersecurity defenses for your company. Develop localized GRC policies, not only taking care of general GRC practices. Deploy real-time risk monitoring systems that leverage AI and machine learning. And believe me, we must take care more about artificial intelligence, but in a good way, to use it for good purposes, but also to know how to use it in a proper way, because it is a very useful, it can be a very useful tool if used properly. And finally, ethical concerns. Employees may hesitate to report misconduct due to fear of retaliation or lack of anonymity. So that's it for now. Thank you for being here for more than 40 minutes so far. Now I will give the floor to Rinal, and we are further proceeding with the Q&As. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ljubica, for delivering such an insightful and informative session. We found the webinar very engaging, and we hope it was valuable for you as well. So before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that the session is in sync with EC Council Certified Network Defender CND program. CND certification is aligned with multiple industry job roles, including network security engineer, network security administrator, network security analyst, network security architect, network defense technician, and security operator. According to LinkedIn 2022, there are over 43,000 job listings seeking network security skills worldwide. PayScale 2022 reports that network security engineers in the United States can earn an average annual salary of USD 92,255. If you're interested in learning more, please participate in the poll being conducted now. Let us know your preferred training mode, and we will reach out to you soon. Okay. should we proceed with the question and answers?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so our first question is it possible to start a career in IT GRC for non-IT? Because I have seen the requirement for applying the job should have relevant experience in X years.
Yes, this is a very interesting question. It actually one of the questions I always get also in my capacity as founder and president of Women for Cyber, which is part of the international cybersecurity community dedicated to women working in the cybersecurity field. But actually, myself, I am the example that you can work in GRC field generally or in some of the aspects of GRC, having in mind that I have a legal background. The last 15 years, I'm working very closely to privacy and data protection and data management now. That shows that for sure, GRC is not only about IT. It is about, for sure, one of the components of GRC is for sure IT solutions, IT systems, and other things which require IT background and IT education and expertise. But also, there are a lot of aspects within and issues within GRC and working positions and roles within GRC where you can work if you don't have IT background. For instance, it all starts with legal. Why? Because in order to know whether you are as a company, I say, or not compliant with GRC, with privacy, with cybersecurity standards and rules, then this is something at the very beginning which started with legal analysis. And actually building internal documents within a company for compliance starts with with lawyers or legal, those people with legal background. That means for sure you can work in the area. On the other side, in GRC, on the other side, sometimes companies, and it's up to them, when they are trying to find some new employee, they start from their requests, what they need in place. So sometimes they need specific someone to work in GRC, but with the IT background because of the duties or requirements for that position within the company. But for sure, to cut it short, for sure you can work and you can jump in GRC with other background, with other than IT background. But what's important also in GRC and nowadays, I believe in every area, is that you must follow those not how can I say, not informal education courses, trainings, different kinds of certifications. Also, EC Council has a lot of, as I can see, offering a lot of these kinds of trainings and certificates, because you must follow what's going on the ground all the time. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Ljubica, for answering that question. We will move to our next question. How can you be efficient in all of resilience if maybe a company is not much invested in security? And how can I make it work for the company that has a culture that is dragging security?
Oh, this is a challenging one, and this is something also I have met with working with various companies, because we should always, first of all, have in mind that when we are speaking this way for building frameworks, building complex systems, we usually have in mind at least mid-sized companies or bigger companies which have human capacity, which have funds for following compliance, have money, a budget for technology solutions, have budgets for more people, have budgets for awareness campaigns, training programs. But not all companies are in that situation. Actually, there are a lot of small or mid-sized companies which don't have capacities, internal capacities to reply properly on the challenges in this ground. And I understand the question, and I will reflect only on awareness, because awareness is something that you must work on all the time. Not all societies in a whole are on the same, compared between themselves, are on the same level of being awareness. For instance, I will say my example, my experience working. Countries in Europe are, and also companies working in European environment, are different when it comes to level of their awareness about the importance of having more women on board when it comes to cybersecurity, because it is good for cybersecurity itself. But this is something, as I said, that you must work on constantly. Different kind of you can do different kind of activities, different kind of programs in order to raise the awareness. Unfortunately, what's important about awareness is top level management. Because if you don't have top level management that understand the need to train employees, to give them the proper the opportunity to know more, if that top level management doesn't have the sensitivity how important is, for instance, risk awareness or cybersecurity awareness, then there is no so much to do within when it comes to raising risk awareness, for instance. But fortunately, compliance here is not something that that depends on the decision makers within a company. It's something that it's imposed from the legal authorities, from state authorities, as a requisite, as a requirement and legal obligation for the company itself. So if company in that case, what's helpful is that companies, when they are trying to be compliant and to stay compliant with those requirements, then they must also put in place their awareness campaigns, trainings, etc. Thank you.
Thank you for answering that. Our next question for you is, in reviewing or harmonizing our policies as organizations, what are the best practices and areas to look out for?
Okay, yeah, we touch this issue a bit. Unfortunately, we didn't have much time to go deeper and further. Maybe we can actually dedicate some special session solely on this question. But to cut it short, as I said, you must first of all do the kind of review or go to the whole landscape in the area where you operate to find out what are the relevant and applicable and relevant regulations, standards, and rules for your area where you work on. For instance, if it's health area, then or insurance area, then you must take care for the whole landscape in that area. Then you go further to ask yourself what are the main legal acts or regulations in data privacy, which I must take care on in data privacy, then in cybersecurity, then now maybe in artificial intelligence. Nowadays we already have in place some international, for instance, on the European Union level, act for AI. Then you should have in place, you should have in mind also audits when you're trying to stay compliant, and when you're reviewing and you're trying to harmonize your internal acts and stay compliant. So you must, first of all, the best possible solution or recommend I can give you is go department by department and ask them, because they know the best, what are the areas and what are the requirements, legal requirements that are important for the area that you operate in. For instance, HR, Human Resources Department, has one legal requirements for them. IT department, cybersecurity department, if there is such, has another one. Then I don't know, maybe client or client department have other legal requirements, and then you will have in front of you more or less the whole landscape of standards, procedures, and rules which are applicable in your case. Thank you.
So thank you once again to our wonderful speaker, Ljubica, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and the knowledge shared with our global audience.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are definitely looking for more sessions with you in the future. And before we conclude the webinar, would you like to give a small message to our audience?
Thank you for your attention, for all your questions. I'm open to answer all of them. It will be great, and I'll be happy if we are in touch further, also through EC Council webinars. And actually, what I want to, at the end, as the close-up of my speech today, is my motto: inspire and let yourself to be inspired. Following also non-formal education, trainings, and this kind of sessions and webinars is a good way for me to inspire you, but also for myself to be inspired through your questions. So follow that way and proceed with empowering yourself.
Thank you so much, Ljubica.
Thank you.